the channel. Welcome to Silloth. We've got about another hour and a half or so of the ebb, and the target today is rays, thornback rays to be precise. So where are we, what we're doing, why we're doing it. Right, well, as I've said, we're at Silloth, fishing over low water. A lot of people, it's very popular mark fishing the prom. For me, standing shoulder to shoulder isn't my idea of fun. I like to have a bit of space and to be out of the way of people, to be honest. I was going to go further along the beach, but there's about 10 anglers already over there, so closest one to me is probably, I don't know, 200 yards or so, so I've got a bit of space. So what we're doing, we are fishing for thornback ray. How we're doing it, I'm going to use same rig as you might have seen us use down in Wales last week, which is the dongle rig. It's about 3.5, 4 foot, and I like to just make mine with £100 main body, £100 rig body, and the reason for that is twofold. Some of the ground out here occasionally can be a little bit rough, and if you get a decent ray and his tail or her tail gets wrapped around your line, it's got a good chance of getting damaged or even worse, snapping. So I like to keep everything pretty strong. So baits are squid and bluey, and the way I do mine is got one of these shepherd's crook tools, get me bit of bluey or squid or whatever, get that lashed up first, pay an extra attention to the top. I like to put my hook through the elastic as well, so it's not just relying on the actual dongle. Put the dongle behind the hook. This happens to be a 6/0 Varavas full circle, perfection loop there. So I just bind that up. The actual dongle itself, I just make mine out of £120 Dyneema cheap braid that I use for skate fishing. Double it over, 2 or 3 knots just to give yourself some grip, and then a loop at the bottom. So I'm going to get myself some squid. I'm going to have that guts on the outside and just bind that up. The reason I'm using the dongle is because this is catch and release, and I want to do minimal damage to the fish, hopefully to the fish, as in hopefully we'll catch something. So, and I just find with the dongle, just about every single time it's just hooked in the scissors, and you might have seen on previous videos I'd actually debarb mine, so there's just a little sort of lug where the barb was, and it just makes unhooking fish a doddle, and it does minimum damage to them. So that's the setup. Happen to have a pulley bead on this one. These are power swivels. They're very small, but they're probably about £200. And again, I'd prefer to have a one of the Trident sort of figure of 8 clips, as I call them, but got a pulley bead again just because that's what I had in my box. So let's get this fired out, see what happens. Right, I'm just going to put these baits a little bit to the right because the tide's moving from east to west, right to left. So right, I'm not going to tighten up with that at all. I'm just going to let the tide work against the mono and just bed the sinker in. So another little thing that I like to do when I'm using dongles, you can see here I make a little bit of a kind of diamond type shape, i.e. I like to have the thickest, lumpiest part of the bait at the top where the hook is, and the narrower part at the bottom, and that's just simply because it'll help it cast rather than having a lumpier bit at the top, which is going to result in it having more chance of spinning. So that's just a little kind of theory that I've got there. So just get that bound up, and I always put, if that makes sense, the bait on that closest to the point of the hook with the dongle inside, because with us having that debarbed, but it's still got a bit of a lug on the hook, but it just means there's even less chance of anything slipping off. You can, if you want, I mean, I do this for taupe fishing on the boat, you can get a tiny little bit of inner tube, little squares, and just pop that over, and then it just keeps everything in place. But I've found it's all right, really. So let's get this fixed spool bait out, see how we go. I'd really like to get a bend in that T800 with something a bit more substantial today, but we'll see how we get on. This is only my second or third cast with this glass tip and braid, so we'll see how we get on. Oh, there's my glasses gone. I'm not going to tighten up at all of that. I'm just going to keep my rod tip high and just hopefully let the braid bow in. I have to say, that felt pretty nice. That it's a totally different kettle of fish, fishing with a softer rod when you're using braid and casting, which of course is probably why this rod and the likes of the T900 were made for fishing with braid. I mean, another T1000 one as well, but I think this glass tip when you're casting definitely helps. Right, we'll see how we get on with that. That is pulling. What I'm going to do, get a little bit of tension on that, just A, so if a fish runs off I'll get a bit of a notification, if you like, but B, just so it doesn't rip me sinker out, because at the minute I think the sinker's just about holding. If I can give it that little bit of line. I was actually wrong about the tide. We've got nearly another 2 hours of ebb. Low water's not the 20 past 6. The tides are starting to make now. They're gradually getting bigger to 1.22 ebb. So I always think making tides can only be a good thing. Conditions today are really, really nice. We've got a very, very light, probably 2-3 mile an hour easterly. So it's quite interesting this, because the tide's running right to left, unless there's some sort of back eddy out there. My mono rod has just pulled itself around. I think there might be a bit of interest on this braid rod, because it hasn't swung round, and if anything I would have expected this rod to go even further round than the mono now. Unless sometimes what I find with really tidal marks, you kind of just get to grips with what's happening in terms of the flow and the effect it's having on your gear. But if anything, this is kind of going slightly over to the right, i.e. against the tide. I think maybe not. Just give that another 5 or 10, and we'll wind in, see what's going on. Right, these baits have been in quite a while, and this one has now eventually pulled round. Definitely weight on this, but it could be weed. Although when I first, I'm seeing a little bit of weed on the line, so it may well be weed, but we'll see. Welcome to Silloth. Right, first 2 baits, untouched, lot of weed. Tide looks like it's, well, still over an hour from bottom. It's like a bit of a kind of back eddy starting, but it might just be because of what's out there in terms of where the depth is and where the current's running, but we'll keep going. So still got just under an hour to low. A lot of pressure out there on the line. There's quite a lot of weed as well, as you saw before there, so I'm going to have to keep each cast probably down to about 10 or 15 minutes, and if it gets really bad I'll just fish with one rod and just alternate. No Gary today, unfortunately. Other commitments, and then he's also planning a trip to France carp fishing, so it's probably going to be a few weeks until we'll get out fishing again. Shame he missed the Wales trip, but I'm sure we'll be back down there. These T800s are sitting lovely in that tide. I mean, the braid rod is actually just sitting straight out despite all the tide. Just the tips just allowing it to kind of cushion and keep the sinker in, which is really good. I would have fished 2 reels with braid today, but my other Aero Technium's still with Shimano, and anybody that's had the pleasure of dealing with Shimano will know how patient you need to be. They've had the reel since January, and I reckon I'll be lucky to get it back in a month. It's cooled down quite a bit now. I think a bit of a westerly picked up, which definitely wasn't forecast. I'm just going to wind this one in, basically just to... Right, so far the ebb has yielded absolutely 0. So let's get this one out. Right, well, session, it's just another level of challenging. It's just started because there's now quite a nasty westerly wind and it started raining, neither of which were forecast. Tide's definitely started to flood now, so all I can hope is that the flood brings with it a change of fortune, because at the minute is absolutely dire. The only plus point is that I'm not feeling any weed on this, but as is often the case with this place, slack water period the weed eases, but then as the tide picks up again the weed comes back on, so we'll just have to keep fishing and see what happens. Well, this has turned into chilly, snotty afternoon, well evening now, because it's, what time is it? 7:20. We're an hour into the flood. It is starting to come in quick, which, based on what happened on the ebb, i.e. nothing, I can only hope that quick flood and tide is going to be a good thing. But the wind's picked up from the west, it's totally changed direction. It's been raining for about half an hour, 45 minutes. It's only just stopped. The cloud seems to be blown over. It looks a bit clearer over to the west, but wind and the rain weren't forecast, so it's just been a little bit annoying, because I can deal with a bit of wind and rain, but when I've driven cross country on the back of a different forecast, it's just a bit annoying, you know what I mean? But anyway, we're here, we're still committed, still giving it a go. We'll keep going. Everybody else has left, they all seem to leave at the same time, so I'm assuming it was a local club comp. I am quite happy with the way the braid has performed on this rod. It actually, for me personally, it feels nicer to cast braid on that rod than what it does mono. I feel like I'm kind of in control with the lead a bit more. I prefer me carbon tip rods for mono, I think, for casting. It's going to take us a bit of getting used to with that light rod, definitely, but enjoying fishing with braid with with the T800, definitely. I'm looking forward to getting my other Aero Technium back so I can fish the two of them. Right, tide is in full swing now. Rods are getting pulled about 45 degrees to the right, which has to be a good thing, I must say, but we'll see. There's a bit of weight on this, but I suspect it's probably weed, because the turn of the tide can bring a bit of weed with it, although I'm not. Well, I was about to say I'm not seeing any on my line, but I am actually. Honestly, the way the session's gone, compared to the way I'd envisaged it to, I'd literally settle for a dogfish, and that shows you how desperate I am. God, nothing on there. Terrible, absolutely terrible. Right, get this one cast well up tide. And there's an attempt to try and combat a little bit of that tide, because it's really starting to pull now. Right. Come on, let's get something. It's cracking sunset over there. Looks really nice. As for the fishing here, not great. Not great. Appreciate, of course, a lot of results around here come at high water from the prom, which is probably only 150 yards behind us, but it's just not really my scene. I'd rather be down here on the beach, but I'm paying the price tonight. Got to confess, I'm determined to get a fish, I really am, but I feel that my chances are dwindling. I've been fished quite hard. I've been putting decent fresh baits out every cast, dealing with the weed, but it's just not happening. It's Sunday night as well, and I have got work in the morning. It's 8:20, so the earliest I'm going to be home is 10:30. I'm going to give it until probably 9. I might have one more cast on each, just in the hope that I can produce something for you, because it has not been the afternoon and evening that I'd envisaged when I planned this trip. But to be fair, I had more than my fair share of luck in Wales last weekend, helped massively of course by Ridian's guidance, but I suppose my luck had to run out somewhere. But look at that sunset, at least there's that. That left hand rod all of a sudden definitely looks fish-like to me. Come on, hopefully something going on. I think there's anything on. Must have just been a little bit of weight there, a little bit of weed on me braid, just where it's meeting the water, and it's just bouncing up and down. It's just not happening, is it? It is just not happening. Right, the laziness has kicked in, because all I'm doing is just lashing another squid on. Let's get that back out. Let's get a fish. Anything to avoid the blank. Well, a weed has been very, very tricky this session. Just horrible, sticky stuff. It's strange. I'd love to hear from people that fish this mark, because I thought I'd maybe got an idea of how the conditions work, i.e. is the weed not as bad when it's not as windy, but it doesn't seem to be the case because it's been calm this weekend. And the weed's still pretty bad. Amazing sunset though, over there. Sky's like pink. Colours are absolutely mint. Well, sadly, that's the end of the session. Fruitless session. Not for the one to try, and cast after cast, baits coming back untouched. Had wind, rain, weed, anything but fish, but never mind, that's fishing for you. So, hope you've enjoyed, hope you've been out and about, getting a few. Thanks as always for your support, it is very much appreciated. Tight lines, keep fishing. Until the next one, we'll see you soon. Cheers.